Hi there, welcome to another application video for 5-Star Finishes Microcement Synergy. This is a new product that we've been offering for a while. The Synergy is very thin and doesn't have any aggregate, so for floors and for walls you can get a very ultra smooth finish. There's no little aggregate tears or small micro pores. Also on large floors you're not going to get any issues with joint lines because the product is so thin, there's no aggregate to kind of overlap and create unsightly joint lines. The prep for the Microcement Synergy is all very similar to the previous video with the base coats and then one coat of extra fine. However, the last coat you'll see is very different in how we apply the product and also in terms of the finish that we get. These are two different bathrooms that you'll see side by side that we're working on kind of simultaneously. This is a kind of a unique window there. They have a bit of a tearaway strip, but it's a little bit further back from the window than it should be. So we masked as well as we could and kind of continued to clear the space there a little bit with the putty knife. Afterwards, we gave the contractor the option to silicone that if the client wanted to in the future. Here we're showing the issues. It's not really an issue with Curdy per se. It's usually more user issue, but a lot of people try to use Curdy, but they don't know how to apply it in a really professional manner. And you get a lot of bubbles, and it's quite what's called drummy. So it's not really adhered to the wall in a lot of places. This, normally we only recommend that the Curdy comes up about 4 to 6 inches. For some reason, the tiler here wrapped it up quite a bit higher and didn't put it on well enough that we could adhere the microcement to it in all the different places, because there was a lot of spots that were basically not adhered to the wall. If you put 3 millimeters of microcement over top of that, the microcement is just going to dry and contract and pull further off the membrane there, and ultimately your microcement will just kind of be very drummy and sitting there, and you could push on it and it's not really attached to the wall, and over time that will cause eventual cracks or even delamination. Ultimately, a roll-on like the Ardex 8+9 is always the safest bet, because you can never have something like that happen. As you see, we just pull it right off there. It's not properly adhered to the wall. Here we're using a concrete binding adhesive, very similar to what we showed in the last video, the Quickcrete, but now we import this one from America, and it's quite a good product. And actually, it's one component, but it's even rated to adhere to mosaic tiles and glass and all different things, although at the moment we're offering our Extreme Primer Plus to do that particular job, but we will test this product as well for that purpose. Although this is all finished, as you can see, so that was dense board behind. The drywaller finished everything off using like concrete fill. Then, just to ensure we get perfect adhesion of the 8+9, similar to when you're going over a finished kind of section there, whether it's concrete board and it's raw, whether it's concrete board with concrete fill or drywall compound on it, the 8+9 will not stick to any kind of dusty surfaces. So you always want to make sure that you use a concrete binder and primer, and make sure that you fully consolidate that surface first. Here we've got Will. Will came up for the training. The other gentleman that you see there, his name is Livio. He's from Eucalypt. Will here is a local in Soyuz, so he'll be able to help you service any of your Soyuz or any other local areas there for microcement. And Livio is already kind of up and running with a few nice projects in Eucalypt there, and we will start to post those on Instagram as they get finished up. This is the 8+9. We've got the dense board, and then they've inserted a marble, prefabricated niche. Around all of that, there was a little bit of packing and filling to do, as it didn't match perfectly up. So we put 8+9 around, and then added some extra membrane there to make sure that we have enough crack suppression there in the future. You can see you can mix the 8+9, you know, to a very plaster-like consistency here, because essentially it is just a plaster, except instead of mixing it with water, you're mixing it with a polymer emulsion to get that extreme waterproofness and also the extreme flexibility that comes with it. So you're going to put a very, you know, generous amount on. Whether you're more skilled with a roller or more skilled with the trowel here, you can choose either or. I think we rolled more of it in the last video. Here we're choosing to do a little bit more of a plaster technique. Just depends on who's doing it. You can see how nice and tidy the tape is on that corner. With the tape, even though in the last video too, even though we've putting a lot onto the wall itself, we always have another person. So Livio in the background, he's actually rolling with a microfiber small roller over the tape. I think we're going to show it. Okay, here, yeah. So here we roll the whole back side of the tape. So similar to the Curdy, if you don't do it properly, you're going to have a drummy kind of adhesion where, you know, some parts are going to be dry and you'll have a similar kind of issue only with the tape section. The rest of the 8+9 where you're just rolling it straight on, you'll never have a circumstance like that. But we find applying it to the tape and to the wall, especially for DIYs, is absolutely the most, you know, safe method. Then you put it on and use your 6-inch and squeeze out any excess starting from the middle, spread it all the way down, spread it all the way up, get rid of any excess behind that tape. There we taped again over all of those joints, over all the things that we cut out, taped over that raw joint of the drywall meeting up with the Schluter. We also put some extra EFS mesh around the handle there for, you know, turning your water on and off, just to make sure that you have extra crack suppression in that particular spot when we put our base coat on. As you're seeing here with Livio, it also makes a much better finish if after you've smoothed the tape down, you add a little bit more over top of the tape. This is done just how a drywaller normally would. If they're using paper tape or some other type of tape when they're doing joints, you always embed the tape, smooth it down, then put a thin coat of plaster over top of it as well. You can see Will there, he's got his ready piece to stick over that last little joint there between the wall and the Schluter membrane. You definitely want to wear gloves, and you can even wear like a little jumpsuit or something. Any of the tools and things that you're going to be working with, you know, in general with any type of waterproofing, aside from obviously like a Schluter system, it's going to be messy, it's going to be very sticky, and you usually kind of end up ruining any of the tools and trays and little roller sleeves and stuff like that, because it's a very strong product, and it's very difficult to wash off once it sets, and it sets very quickly as well. So here we're using a 13 mil, or are we using a 13 mil? I think, I can't remember what I said in the last video, but I believe that's a 13 mil roller. If you're finding you're getting too much texture, you can always switch to a 10 mil roller. You obviously don't want it to be like ultra textured, because you do have to cover over it with the base coats. So you'll see too later on that Livio will actually go over this and smooth down any little lumps and bumps with a 6-inch and kind of press the 8+9 down into a smooth consolidated surface. You want to go slowly with this, making sure that you're rolling everything out nicely, making sure that the product is very well mixed, and ensuring that there's not too many lumps. As one product sets up, don't try to remix more into it, because you will get a lot of lumps. You want it nice and creamy like that, and you will have issues with the product if you continue to try to do a large bathroom and keep adding and mixing with the same things. You can keep the roller, like the roller sleeve, but make sure you're cleaning the tray out in the bucket between each mix of kits, you know? So then we're doing nice full rolls up and down, making sure that we've got nice coverage. This is just the first coat. There'll be a second coat that goes on after this. You can see the product is kind of a bit whiter and creamy in color, and you see the tape there is very dark black. So anything with a lot of polymer generally dries darker, just like a paint always goes on light and dries dark. So in this particular case, when it's really black like that, then you know that it's fully cured. Instead, it usually takes about an hour. There again, you can see Livio applying in the opposite direction. You always want to apply your waterproofing vertical and then horizontal so that you're covering over it and making sure that you have a very solid, impenetrable water layer. It's going on a lighter color, as we said, and then drying that dark color. Doesn't take that long. It depends on the ambient kind of temperatures and humidity. Again, we're going nice and slow here. We didn't see him smoothing that down, but we might see it in the coming, video sections here. Olivia's just finishing the bathroom up there. Doesn't look like I got the part where we smooth it down, but you can kind of use your best judgment there, and if there's any little raised ridges or little unmixed bits or anything like that, just take the 6-inch and very lightly smooth the wall down a little bit with very light pressure. So there you can see the 8+9 is very dark. It's all set and ready. This particular bathroom, the floor is all tiled, and there's no baseboard. We did all the ceilings and all the walls in both bathrooms, so everything is microcement except the floor. So we always start with the ceiling, then do the walls. Start with the ceiling, then do the walls, because you don't want the plaster falling on your finished walls, obviously. We're using the Come flexible base coat trowels that we offer there. We always use those. They're very easy and flexible. We've got the EIFS polycarbonate hawks. They're very easy to clean, much better than using the metal one, but if you're DIY, you can use any type of metal hawk, but it's just only going to probably last for that particular project. So we're onto the walls here, applying the first coat of base coat microcement wall and shower. Any walls that don't have the waterproofing have the interior quartz primer fine on them. That just gives a nice little bonding agent to make sure that you're getting even absorption and a nice take up of the grains. You do not need to prime over the Arctic's 8+9. The 8+9 acts as a waterproofer and the primer in one. You can go straight over top of it. It's very easy too because it's black and the base coat is white, so it's easy to see that you're getting a nice coverage there of the particular waterproofing. You'll have a few little bits and pieces that will stick through potentially depending on how well you did your waterproofing. You see it has a nice kind of light texture there, but there might be a few little dags or anything that pokes through. The next day you just come back and lightly scrape those off before you do your second base coat. That's an important junction there. We're taped back, about 3 to 4 millimeters from the bottom of the tile. And then you always want to make sure in every coat that you're fully filling that void and building up over the tile nicely. You never want to have any misses down there, because then it gives an intrusion area for water to come and work its way, into the wall or draw up the microcement, or, the tile junction where there might not be enough grout or microcement. We always silicone it after and seal it. But you never want to leave anything to chance when you're talking about water. So always make sure you're bringing that right down to the bottom. That's about the texture that you're looking for the first coat. Not too many lines, not too thick, not too thin. Just a nice even texture. It's got a heavier sand in it, to give you a nice base coat, cover over everything nicely, give you a very strong consolidated wall, and to cover over the 8+9 as well. But you don't want to have too many lines, too many ridges. You don't want it too thick or sagging or anything like that. It probably goes on, just about a mil and a half, probably like a mil and a half over the 8+9. And then the subsequent coats, the next coat probably only goes on about a 0.5 mil, and the top coats, even less. The moldings in this particular project, sometimes they're installed first. They chose to install them afterwards just because they didn't have them ready, I believe. They didn't have the channels too. They sent the wrong color of channel for the glass. So we went ahead here, and I think we did the first couple base coats without the channel, or at least the first base coat. They came and screwed the channel in about midway through the project, and then that gave us enough time to mask them off and then have any of the subsequent coats kind of fill in that little void, where if your wall isn't perfectly straight, there'll be a few voids between the wall and the metal channel. So that's why we always recommend having that channel installed first, or at the worst case scenario in the middle of the project at least, so you can fill up to it. This is quite a long video. I made sure I got a lot of footage of this project because the previous video was quite short. It wasn't that large of a project. Here I really had time to work with the boys here, and we did a nice training and install and made sure I got lots of nice footage. So I'm not going to talk too much over the video. Obviously I'm not going to talk the full hour and 20 minutes. But here you can just see how the first coat's coming together. You can see a little bit, obviously, of the 8+9 kind of peeking through there, but as it dries, the cement will kind of harden up and go from more translucent to a more white color. Lime does the same thing as well, so it will have better coverage when you come back the next day. There's not too many lines there. It's a pretty nice first coat. You can't really get much better than that. All of the floors, we run our finger along the bottom there, make sure it's always fully pressed down into the tape joint line there. This is the second day. We're starting to do the second coat. Can't remember exactly how things worked here, but there were 2 bathrooms and we were just doing a coat per day of each different thing because they were quite large bathrooms. But for some reason, I think we decided to do the second coat on this before moving into the next bathroom. The second coat of the microcement base coat really dries nicely into the layer beneath, so it makes it much easier. So if you're a DIY or even a new installer, you might find the first coat a little bit difficult. Doing your base coats in any type of Venetian plaster or microcement are always challenging because there's no absorption. With all the primers and everything being waterproof, it's not sucking the moisture out of the product, so it just kind of sits there and floats on the surface. So you have to be a little bit more skilled to get the right thickness and to not have too many lines. On the second coat, as you can see, it's very easy because it just dries directly into the product beneath, and all you have to do is continue to smooth it down and get rid of any excess, and it will just become a nice consolidated surface without any lines. Again, sometimes you'll get some pinholes and different things as it kind of includes the air, because with the thicker the product for a base coat, there's more air that sits down into the surface where all the different grains and holes are. So when you travel over top of that, you kind of include the air and it has to come out of the product. Also, if you over mix it, sometimes you can put some air into the product itself that needs to come out. So you always want to watch for those little pinholes. Make sure that you're smoothing down and consolidating that surface and getting rid of any of the pinholes, as they will become harder and harder if you continue through and leave pinholes everywhere. The thinner products will want to keep those pinholes kind of through the finish, and then they obviously add increased risk of having a surface that's not as water resistant as it should be, and obviously harder to seal as well. We're just applying the microcement base coat in a haphazard manner here. There's no official technique. You don't have to try to get it on nicely. We always just put it on there, get a decent amount onto the wall, and then come back as it's drying and smooth it down, get rid of any excess, remove the lines, close up any pinholes, and make sure that it's a nice, firm, consolidated surface. You do not have to be overly particular about putting it on perfectly in each kind of application. Just get it onto the wall and then make sure that you're smoothing it down after and not having any areas that are too thick or thin. And removing all the little lines. You'll see as it sets up more and more, it just becomes really easy to get a nice consolidated surface. Here you can see you see how it's making kind of quite a line and a mark. It's not dry here, this is just the first pass over, so as that sets up, he'll continue to work it as it dries, and when there's nothing more coming off the wall, then it will really start to pack down and consolidate into a nice firm surface for you. So we're moving into the little window niche here, and as we discussed before how we do those externals, you always want to make sure that you're getting enough plaster on the actual edge of the external. So we always plaster across the edge, leave it to set and dry up a little bit, and then take the 6-inch and kind of scrape that off a little bit after and clean it up, ensuring that you're not being too aggressive with the edge and taking anything off of it. You always want to kind of build up over top of it enough. So the whole window, you'll see he'll edge out across there and leave the plaster sitting there for a little bit to make sure that you're getting enough onto that edge. If you do that on one side, you don't have to do it on the other. Then the other side, all you have to do is plaster away from the edge, and you don't want to get anything on the opposite wall like we're doing here. So there he's edging the whole window frame out, come in smooth and over top of it, A lot of people I hear, they love the base coat even as a final finish. A lot of people say they love their bathrooms even just after the base coat's applied. Without the top coats, it has a really nice kind of aggressive sandy finish. I wouldn't recommend just using the base coat as a finished product just because it's a little bit more open pores, a little bit more grainier. Obviously not the best surface to clean for 10 or 20 years in a shower. But for aesthetics, in terms of a beautiful kind of sandy finish, you can use this base coat on any other interior walls, exterior walls, fireplaces, hood ranges, all these different types of places. You can have a really nice aggressive kind of sandy finish. The color of it too is an off-white, has a very beautiful kind of sandy off-white, so that is another option as well if you want to have a very authentic kind of natural look without adding any tint to the particular product. Again, there's a whole wall. Livio and Will have applied the product over the whole wall. There's lots of kind of lines and ridges, and as it sets up, we're coming back with those flexible base coat trowels and constantly smoothing over that wall, constantly closing the pinholes, closing the grains, getting rid of any, chatter marks, removing all of the lines and ridges, and just starting to really pack and press that surface down into something very strong and very consolidated. You can see there, that's a very good example of kind of a final finish that you're looking for on your base coat. Some final photos of the base coat after the second layer, drying out nicely. We'll scrape those floors too the next day, or even that day we'll scrape. It's better to scrape it after each day before it fully sets. Scrape as much off, especially around those edges. Ensure that they're clean and tidy so that you're not getting too much buildup around there and sweep the whole floor up. You don't want dust and different aggregate sizes getting into your final coats of plaster. That's how it's dried out. You see it's that nice sandy white color. Very smooth, consolidated. They had installed their nice black channel there as well. And this is the other bathroom now that you're seeing. I did not videotape, I believe, the first coat, but I did the second coat because I want you guys to have as much information as possible and as many hours of videos to watch here to make sure that you're successful in your own projects. I'll just make a note here that Livio is more of a stonemason, and Tyler and has done a lot of beautiful projects and has, quite a bit of experience with all different installs and, troweling and things like that, but he wasn't used to the constant noise of the trowel running across the grain there. And in a small bathroom sometimes, for large periods of time, you might, have some sensitivity to just the sound of it. It doesn't really bother me anymore, but I do remember having that kind of issue sometimes. So he had his little earmuffs there, and plus there was some people playing some loud music and stuff, so he was just kind of zoning out and working on the wall himself there. If you're just wondering why he was wearing earmuffs at that particular time, I don't think he wore them too much during the project, but for some reason he had them on there. If you're doing really large floors, I find in the right acoustics with your trowel constantly running over the grains, it definitely can make quite a loud sound, and sometimes it's a little bit high pitched, so I'll even sometimes just put some foam earplugs in or something like that if you're on the trowel for 8 hours like that. Most of the Venetian plasters and microcements aren't gonna really bother you at all in that sense. But sometimes if you're in a small room and it's a little echoey, or if you're doing, like I said, like really large floors, then it can kind of bother you once in a while. So here we switch to, I think we're on to the top coat now. We've switched to the plastic trowels, yeah. So we're doing the top coat. This is the Microcement Wall and Shower Extra Fine, and we've got it tinted to, I will have to check the color, but I'll put it in the description. I only tinted it close to the color. I always recommend if someone wants an exact shade that we will purchase the water-based stain color top from Sherwin-Williams. And you'll see later on in the video we actually stain over the walls using the color top undiluted over the Synergy. You never want to dilute the color top because the Synergy is not very absorbent. So you'll see we beautifully kind of create a cloudy aesthetic and use our sponges to do that. Anytime people and designers spec, different colors that aren't on our color chart, we always just tint it to a similar color, and then before the sealers we always stain with the color top or a similar product. Behr also has a water-based stain, although Benjamin Moore does not carry a water-based concrete stain for some reason, so don't try to get anything from Benjamin Moore there. I haven't looked into other paint places, Deluxe or different places. I'm sure there's many different options. So here Will is edging out, the perimeter. I also do this and always talk about that in my videos. I like to edge everything out, and then it makes the troweling component so easy. As you can see, you just grab that extra fine and spread it nice and tight over that base coat. It's also going to have a few little pinholes and things like that, but it's going to set up much quicker on the wall than the base coat because it's thinner, and the base coat now has 2 layers, so it's absorbing twice as much water as when you were putting the microcement base coat over just the first base coat. This is also thinner and just really creates a quick, beautiful kind of consolidated surface. It doesn't take too long for it to set up and to start to create a nice smooth finish for you. We don't use the metal extra fine or extra flexible trowels here, especially since it's a light color. The sand is just going to kind of continue to pull dark kind of carbon out of that blade and ruin your finish. So plus the finish is a little bit undulating. You don't want to use like a stiff metal inox trowel or anything like that. We always find that the plastic trowels are really the best option for microcement and always give you the best, most beautiful surface, gets rid of the most lines, and really allows you to work the surface without ever having to worry about it darkening. You can see the microcement is mixed. It's very creamy, much thicker than like a yogurt, but a little thinner than a peanut butter. It stays on the hock there. It shouldn't be kind of falling off or anything like that. Has a very nice viscosity, very easy to work with. Stays wet for quite a while, has a nice working open time. You're not going to get too many issues with joint lines or dry edges or anything like that with this particular product. There's a full wall done. Livio's coming back. He's very, detail oriented, and Will's a little bit better at really getting the plaster on there. So we had Will applying, and then Livio was doing a lot of the cleanup, tidying up. If you have 2 people, that's the best to have one person apply and then one person slowly smoothing and burnishing behind you. We're also using the sponge there for larger walls. That is a big wall. Sometimes you can get a little bit of a dry edge there. You can just use the sponge to quickly bring that together. And then when you start to burnish it, it's all going to look like one piece. That's a really good trick of the trade that a lot of people don't know, but you can even sponge the whole wall and get it perfect and then start to burnish and smooth it down after that. There's lots of different ways. So sponging is a very, very good technique that can help you, especially if you are, struggling with the trowel a little bit at the start, you can just sponge the wall down as you see here and smooth it down, get rid of your lines and edges, and then run the trowel over it a few times to really consolidate that surface. We like to use the face of the trowel a lot for those lower sections. We're really good at being able to get down there and smooth that down, as opposed to just trying to bring it from the bottom upwards. That nice half moon crescent shape that we always are training in Venetian plaster and micro cement. You don't want to be too linear with your movements. You have to hold the trowel in order to get that movement correctly. You can't just grip the handle like you would a knife or something like that. Say if you're chopping and you just grab it straight on. You actually want to be up more around the very top edge of where the handle starts to meet the blade, and hold between your kind of index finger and your thumb, and this will allow you to have more of that half moon shape and allow the wrist to move in that particular way. If you lock the wrist too much in a full grip on the trowel, you can't get that particular movement. So you're kind of holding it right at that junction where it curves between the handle and then it goes down to meet the blade. So Livio's just constantly smoothing this wall down. This is just the first coat of top coat. There's still another coat to go, but if you want a really professional product, always work that first coat of extra fine or fine into the base coat. Ensure that it is as smooth and consolidated as possible, and then your last and final coat is going to be very easy to apply. That shower angle there, we mask it off about, at this point, only probably about 1 mil. And then we want to bring it just like the tiles, just embed it over top of the metal edge there, and ensure that it's all micro cement so that there's no little gap there where water can kind of get out of your shower. Obviously, again, we know that's going to be silicone, but for a very professional project, it should all be plaster and sealed first, and then the silicone is just really a decorative measure at that point. Now you see the different shades and colors coming out already. Any of these products, as you work them and burnish them, they're going to shade up. Light colors shade up a little less, and dark colors shade up more. So the color here is Benjamin Moore Pale Oak. I was just looking it up. So here we're moving into the Microcement Synergy. As you can see here, very different application. We now recommend that you use a brush and a roller to apply this product. On the floor, not so necessary. You can just kind of pour it on and trowel it out. But because it's a thinner, kind of more paint-like product, especially for ceilings and walls, we're recommending that you mix it with about 1.5 to 2 liters of water for a 20 kilogram bucket. And as it thickens, from wall to wall, you can add a little bit more water and remix it if you like. The system here, again, we're using a little bit stiffer, like 1.5 millimeters, smaller burnishing plastic trowels. This is tinted to Benjamin Moore Pale Oak. And we're using a microcement or a microfiber 10 mil roller here to apply it. It applies very easily, just like a paint, although this product is extremely strong when it dries, highly modified with very expensive, very high-end polymers and all different types of cementitious products. There's no actual aggregate in the particular product itself. As I said, you're not going to run into the issue of having joint lines or anything like that. So one person rolls the product on, you just do, 3 or 4 or 8 square feet or however much you want. And then the other person or yourself can pick the trowel up and then slowly start to smooth the product down. The Synergy is not designed to work the same as the other products that have a lot of ability to hold water and to move around on the surface, for a long period of time. This is going to be a little stickier, a little bit more dry, and if you need a bit more, just reapply it. But you're going to find it sets up very quickly, so all you have to do is run that trowel over it a few times, get the excess off, and it's going to start to set up very quick, very smooth, give a nice consolidated surface. There won't be any pores, there won't be any kind of lines. It's going to be a rock hard, ultra waterproof surface. The Synergy itself is more advanced than using the powder mixes. Because it's much more waterproof, you'll find that even the Synergy without sealing really does great to not darken and repels water much more. So it is a really nice final surface. Obviously the powder mixes work great as well when they're paired with our specific sealing protocol, especially the oil-based sealer. But if you want something that's even a little bit more new age and an ultra water repellent and very, very smooth for cleaning, then the Microcement Synergy is a really good option. It also brings your floors and your walls together. As we've broken up the system of wall and floor, we don't have one particular product that will give the exact same finish. So the Synergy helps us now for you to do your base coat wall and shower system, then your wall and shower top coat fine or extra fine. Same with the floor, you end up with the Microcement floor fine, but they don't match exactly. So then you can do one coat of Synergy over your walls and your floors and have a perfectly, uniform finish everywhere from wall to floor. It seems a little unusual that we're like painting this product on, but it really is the best way of getting it on. I know a lot of people just kind of trowel it out as well, but the paint and then the back troweling is a beautiful way of doing it. Plus, you're able to get and work that Synergy right into all the pores along your floor line, along the ceiling lines, and around any little corners and edges like that. So you're making sure that you're getting an absolutely fully consolidated shower. So after Will's kind of cut everything in for that particular wall, you're going to see Livio do a nice load up in the tray. So this is the nice consistency of the Synergy. You see it's very creamy, just kind of like a very light, thin yogurt. Again, I honestly can't remember if it looks like a 13 mil roller sleeve to me. I definitely prefer the microfiber for this because it's going to hold a lot more product. But again, based on your circumstance, you might want to either use a 10 mil or a 13 mil microfiber roller sleeve there. He's going to apply quite a bit of product. See, we've given ourselves quite an amount of product there to make sure that we have enough open time for it to come back and get spread out and smoothed down. You'll see it, pinholing a little bit there as it kind of goes into all the fine little micro pores and fills them all up. And Livio comes back here with the trowel. You'll see there's quite a bit of excess here, but you want that excess because you want to have enough water on that surface so it's not tightening up too quickly. You can take that excess off and make sure that you're coming back a few times as it dries, and it does dry quite quickly, and ensuring that your particular wall is all nicely smooth, that there's no ridges or bumps or any little pinholes or anything like that. He's putting quite a bit of pressure too, consolidating it. As he starts to pull off that excess, it's going to dry quicker and quicker in the areas where you're removing kind of that top coat of excess that's holding the water onto the surface. I think there's probably like a little piece of sand or something there from the base coat that's kind of poking out, so he's just edging that off just to tidy that up. When he first went over the wall, you saw how there was kind of some coming off, but it's already setting up more of like a plaster consistency there, so he's not getting too much kind of excess. You see how it's setting up very quickly, and you'll get that kind of shading because the Synergy is so thin and a little bit transparent. You can put it on in a way that if your base coat is a different color, you can have a lot of different colors kind of ripping through. So the Synergy can create very unique, kind of almost like Venetian plaster-like finishes depending on how you use it. I would highly recommend going with a darker base coat color and then putting the Synergy on as a lighter color and allowing the darker shades to kind of rip through it. If you need a little bit extra, just roll a little bit extra on. Like I said, there's no aggregate in the particular product that's going to cause some joint lines or overlapping. So it will just continue to kind of melt into itself. It makes it very easy to redo and get a nice consolidated surface. There's really no system I know of that will produce this much of a smooth, waterproof surface. And in showers, you really want that. You want something that's going to last and be durable. Once you're finished with this and it dries and you do the full sealer protocol over it, it's pretty hard to have any issues with it unless you kind of put a hole through the wall. We're spending extra time on this particular space. Whatever wall the shower head is on is the most important wall in the entire shower. It takes 90% of the abuse and maybe just a couple feet on the other wall there. But this particular wall, as we know, takes all the abuse. So we're going to make sure that it is done as nicely as possible and just won't have any kind of texture or any little pinholes or anything. Make sure that that's always the nicest, smoothest, best wall in your shower because it takes the most abuse. One thing I just wanted to mention about the Synergy is when you're mixing it with tints, so there's a liquid portion and then the powdered portion. Always mix the tints into the liquid portion first, then add the extra water within reason. Don't add it all, maybe just add a liter if you have a 20 kg bucket. Then slowly add the powder and mix that in so it's fully lump free, and then finally add the last bit of water to it. If you just mix the whole thing up with the powder, or just chuck the powder in, don't mix it really, put the tint in and it kind of absorbs into the powder, you'll get streaks of tint kind of everywhere, as it's tough to kind of get the tint out of the powder and how it absorbed into it. So always mix that tint really well with some water into the Synergy liquid first, then add portions of the powder slowly, mix it really well, add the last bit of water, mix it up really nicely, let it set up for about 10 or 20 minutes after. It will kind of turn into a thick yogurt. And then you just have a beautiful Synergy product to work with here for your final layer of microcement. So we've applied, the wall to his right there is still dry. So he is pulling the excess product on a larger wall there out into the area that's a little bit drier. That's always the best way of getting rid of any extra little excess, is pulling it from an area where you have the product to an area where you don't. You can see like how that's starting to shine and polish up, and how smooth that surface really becomes with the Synergy. Really, really great, kind of revolutionary product and concept for floors as well. Just makes things very easy for doing nice floors. When you have really large flooring, and you have an aggregate in your top coat, it's near impossible to get it down over thousands of square feet without certain edges in different places drying out on you, and then having these kind of dry lines where it looks a little unsightly. With this Synergy, it's very easy to handle those and deal with them, as you're not really going to have any overlap of aggregate. Due to its nature and chemistry and kind of how thin it is and how it absorbs into the top coat, it gives you so much extra abrasion resistance as well. So normally, like with a sandy kind of microcement, you can still kind of dig into the sand grains and etch away at it, because its abrasion resistance is only good once the sealers are over top of it, and the sealers kind of give you that consolidated abrasion resistant surface. But with the Synergy, you're getting that ultra tough abrasion resistance before you're even putting the sealers over top of it, so it makes it a lot better for durability. There's also much less pores or any little grains and open surfaces, where even if you put a lot of sealer, it will set into those, and over time dirt and particles and different things will kind of get into the microcement pores there, and not damage the finish, but just make it look a little unsightly. So the Synergy also really helps to just produce the best surface possible that really is not going to really need to be cleaned very often. We tasked Livio with doing the windows here, as he's kind of the most detail oriented here, likes to work in small spaces. When you have multiple people, you just want to find what they like to do, what they're good at, what they're interested in, and then engage them kind of in those different ways. And also, he had done most of the windows, so he's familiar with, the best way to work them. So if someone's doing a window, like, just have that same person do the niche or the window or that specific spot for all the coats, because they're familiar with what's going on. If you switch and swap around tasks too much, sometimes you won't get as nice a product. So he's choosing to use the 6-inch here, a steel blade. Obviously, he's not going to use that very much in that particular case, because as it dries, it will start to darken and pull the carbon out of the steel there. But in small spaces, the 6-inch can be very valuable to use, just to kind of tidy up a few little areas before you switch to the plastic trowel, as you see here. You also want to roll that Synergy, as you saw, over all the little edges, any externals, really work it into all the sand grains there and make sure that it's really nicely smooth into those externals after. You can use your hand or a glove or a little plastic bag balled up. As it starts to dry on those externals, you can polish them up like that and smooth them down, with like a balled up little plastic bag, or the side of your glove or anything like that. But I think the plastic bag is probably the best option. So you're seeing photos of the final product. Very nice, smooth, all the walls, ceilings, everything done in microcement. When it's all done and dusted and you go in there and everything's all finished up, it's a really nice surface to have that's easy to keep clean, and you don't have to worry about mold and mildew, and you don't have to worry about redoing your ceilings or having to repaint the walls or anything like that for quite some time. So that was the end of the Microcement Synergy application. Here you can see Sherwin-Williams color top tinted to the same color that we did the Synergy in, but this is going to give you the exact shade because it's a little bit more exact than we can get in a plaster. Now, and when we're using the fine or the extra fine, or if you're doing a floor, you always want to water down the water top 1-to-1 water first, and you can do a couple coats of that, or like a 1-to-1 and then a full strength, but it will absorb too strongly if you just try to use it straight out of the can. Now with the Synergy, because the Synergy is much more waterproof and doesn't have any kind of pores, you don't want to water it down. So this is straight out of the can. We've got a half sponge there, and we're putting it on in a very cloudy kind of way. You'll see actually later on that the way you put it on does create an effect, and you'll have quite a few little subtle lights and darks that create a very nice Venetian plaster kind of finish here when it dries up. These walls are, handcrafted with so much time and energy put into them. And with all of the little details and putting on even the color top here, it just takes the finish even to another level and makes it so beautiful. The nice thing too about this Synergy is it's very waterproof. So as we've discussed before, the oil-based sealer does like to find any pores in any areas that aren't sealed and will color enhance. So we've seen people that make mistakes or leave not enough polyseal on their product, or they don't put the polyseal on correctly with the recommended coats. We always recommend doing 3 or 4 coats of polyseal depending on the system, like a 1-to-1 water and then 3 full strengths of polyseal, as we outlined in the last video. If you don't do that correctly, you'll put our final oil sealer on and it will darken your finish and can technically ruin it if that's not the look that you were going for. Here, because the Synergy, as you can see, is so smooth and so waterproof, and then the color top is also going on and acting as a sealer, and then when you put the polyseal over top of that, we actually only recommend 2 coats of full strength polyseal over this particular system. And the chances of having any color enhancement from the oil are very slim to none with the Synergy system, so that's also another reason that it's great for DIY people. You can see how beautiful that surface is. It's just amazing when you sponge it on and create that nice cloudy aesthetic. And you can see the color is, you know, definitely different than what we matched. You know, we can only match so well, so that's going to dry definitely a little bit darker than what we had on the wall, and has like a little bit more, it looks like, of a kind of a brown undertone. You can't produce the exact undertones because an acrylic is you know, either a white or a clear kind of acrylic medium, and when you're dealing with sands and cements, the what's called the refractive index, the way that the light hits the product, is very different, so you can never create the same undertones that you have in paint, unfortunately. But with the color top, it really makes your life easy. You can always get the color that the designer wants. We pulled the little orbital sander out here. On that particular wall and area, there was a few little dags or a few little things in the Microcement Synergy that weren't perfectly polished, so I'm not a big fan of sanding. We don't recommend sanding, you know, between coats and everything like they do in Europe and Italy. I don't advocate a lot of sanding. In this particular case with the Synergy, it would make sense, especially if it's your first time using it, to just go over the walls before you stain it or seal it. You can use an orbital with a 220 and just lightly sand just a few areas. If there's a little raised section or a little nodule or anything like that, you can just polish it back before you do your final coat of sealing or staining. You don't need to use an orbital too, you could even just use a little sanding sponge. The product is very strong, but when you're talking about like knocking down a tiny little dag or nodule, you don't need much to kind of remove that. So we're applying that color top. You see, because the Synergy is so water resistant, it's not absorbing much, so you don't need very much on the sponge, and it goes quite a distance, and you want to always apply it in the circular kind of shape. I mean, you could do any application. You could do a full painted mural at this point onto the microcement or anything like that with the stain before adding your sealers to it. So you could build a lot of different colors and different things like that as well. You could do someone's, you know, logo or decal or all different types of concepts and things. So it doesn't have to be like this, but in this particular case, we're just going with a nice cloudy aesthetic. So all the color top is done, and now we're moving into the polyseal. With the Synergy system, We usually, if you do the color top, we just recommend 2 coats of polyseal. Even if you don't use the color top, you really only need 2 full strength coats of polyseal. If you want it to be ultra, protective of your finish, you could do 3 coats of polyseal maximum over the Synergy, but you really only need 2 coats because it's so waterproof that you're not really gonna get much color enhancement from that oil. There's the beautiful windowsill there, all smooth, no pores, nice coat of polyseal. You want to make sure that you're putting as much polyseal sealer on there as you can, working it back and forth, making sure that you're getting a very good solid layer of sealer on each coat. If you do this properly, the chances of ever having water getting through the finish are pretty much 0. It's just if you're negligent on closing pinholes and not putting enough sealer and checking over it all and doing it too quickly, then you can run into problems. But if you do it as you've seen in this video, the chances of having any water intrusion are pretty much 0, honestly. The polyseal we're using, definitely in this case, I can confirm that is a 10 mil microfiber roller. So here actually we've switched now to the high wear 3-component oil-based sealer. It also is a 10 mil roller, but it's not microfiber. You're not going to want to use a microfiber because it will pull the little hairs out onto the wall. So you want to use a lint-free, non-microfiber 10 mil roller for the high wear. It goes on razor thin over the Synergy. There's not very much oil that you need. You can spread it out very thinly, but again, you want to make sure that you're going in different directions, putting a lot of pressure on it, working it over several times. You'll see as well, we actually switched rollers. So once we finished one bathroom, we took that roller off and put a new one on and dry rolled over the finish about 30 minutes after it's set up to make sure that all the excess is off those walls. You're not having any sagging, you're not having any issues like that. It should be very, very consolidated, very smooth, no excess oil whatsoever. You also want to check around all of the windows and those edges because any little bit of oil will start to pool over and round over the top edge there. And then you'll want to dry roll that out as well because if it sets, you can't really sand it or get rid of that afterwards. So we've taped back from the floor tile a little bit there, and then we're cutting it in, but we're making sure that oil is coming right onto the tile. You don't want to have that oil up the wall and allowing water to draw up into your microcement finish. You want the microcement tight to the tile, and you want that oil right down on the tile because the oil, once it's down and dry, it's never coming off and no water can get through that. You've also maybe noticed that all of the protection was already taken off. We cleaned everything up. You do not want to continue to do the oil with any tape or protection because it won't ever come off. Same with the floor. We did tape the floor out, but immediately after we pulled that tape up because once that oil dries, you won't be able to get the tape up. There was some oil that got onto the tiles as well, and if you don't pull that tape up, the oil will permanently kind of stain and damage your tiles too. So pull everything up and then grab acetone is the only product that will dilute and remove that oil sealer before it dries, and use a rag and some acetone and just clean any excess up around the edges and off your tiles and your floor, and you won't have any issues the next day. Here you can see Livio being very, very particular here and slowly dry rolling and smoothing over these walls and making sure that they look absolutely perfect for the client. And also that there's enough, sealer that's been pressed into every little nook and cranny and every little portion of that Microcement Synergy to ensure that you have 100% waterproof finish. Once this oil sealer that we use cures, it's fully chemical resistant, basically fully stain resistant. Even if you put paint stripper on it, it does not come off the wall. Unless you grind it off, it's not going to have, anything that's going to affect it. So some simple water usually just beads right off the wall. It doesn't require much cleaning. Mold and mildew doesn't really grow on it due to its chemical resistant nature. So you want to make sure that, you do this once and you do it right the first time. It's quite a durable product due to the aluminum oxide powder that we have. In about a liter of mixed product, there's about a pound of aluminum oxide added into it. So it's almost like a hybrid of a metallic finish. So there's a lot of metal in that finish, and it does definitely change the aesthetic and the look. So you always want to make sure before you do a project to make samples and get them approved with the sealer on there so the designer or the client knows exactly what that finished product will look like and what the sheen will be, because as you can see, it's not a matte finish. It definitely has a sheen to it. Some areas are more matte, some areas are shinier. It really depends on just how the product dries and how much of the product is in different spots and how the light catches it. I can't stress enough how important it is to even have a couple extra roller sleeves and even dry roll over the walls twice after. Dry rolling is very important for this product to ensure that you're not getting any sagging, that you're getting the right level and amount of product, and pulling any excess off that will definitely start to reduce the gloss of it and give you a little bit more of a satin finish as well. As you can see, that wall is just beautiful. It's all been dry rolled and it looks really nice and amazing there. So this is the next day. You can see the sealer is all dried. It's not as shiny as it looked the day before. Will's putting back in the lights. We're not leaving that for the general contractor. We took them out. They were installed originally, so if we're going to remove something, then we're going to put it back and make it look nice for them after. These were really kind of cool lights. They kind of mounted in flush and had some screws that it kind of attached to, and then it had a plate that stuck to the face of it magnetically. We did get a little bit of oil on some of those screws, so we was having to use the pliers to try to loosen them up because the sealer is so strong. They were kind of cemented closed there for a little bit. And then we'll just close the video out with a little bit of photo shots here of the final product. I hope this video helps you in your quest to do your own bathroom or your own microcement projects. And as always, you can always contact us in email or Instagram or in different ways, and we're always happy to share our knowledge with you.